The shadow and the light there is a secret landscape within every human being, a place where the light of our best selves meets the darkness we try so hard to hide. We are taught to show only the brightness, the kindness, the calm surface that makes others comfortable, but beneath that surface lives a second world, the unspoken emotions, the silent wounds, the desires we judge, the fears we deny. This hidden realm is what some call the shadow. It is not evil, but it frightens us because it reveals everything we have rejected in ourselves. The shadow is the truth that hides behind our masks, and the light is the courage that dares to face it. From childhood, we learn what parts of ourselves are acceptable. We are rewarded for being polite, obedient, cheerful, and quietly shamed for being angry, sad, or different. So we begin to exile pieces of our soul. We push them deep into the unconscious where they wait. But those exiled parts do not disappear. They transform into whispers in our dreams, flashes of emotion we cannot explain, sudden reactions that seem to come from nowhere. The shadow finds ways to speak even when we try to silence it, and when we ignore it for too long, it speaks louder. Through anxiety, jealousy, or the inexplicable pain of feeling empty even when life appears full. To live only in the light is to live half a life. The person who denies their anger will struggle to find strength. The one who hides their sadness will never learn compassion. Every feeling has its wisdom, but it can only be heard when we stop labeling parts of ourselves as good or bad. Light and darkness are not enemies. They are partners in transformation. The more we resist one, the weaker the other becomes. Just as the sun defines the shadow defines the light. Without darkness, light has no depth. When we finally turn to our shadow, something extraordinary begins to happen. The emotions that once felt dangerous start to lose their power. We realize that our anger was often a cry for respect, that our fear was a longing for safety, that our envy was a hunger for purpose. The shadow reveals not just our wounds, but our unmet needs. It becomes a map to the places inside us that still wait to be healed. Every time we acknowledge a part of ourselves we once condemned, we reclaim a piece of our lost wholeness. But facing the shadow requires humility. It means admitting that we are not as purely good as we pretend, nor as hopelessly broken as we fear. It asks us to look into the mirror of the unconscious and see both the light and the darkness reflected together. It is uncomfortable work. It is the moment when you realize that the person who irritates you is showing you something you refuse to see in yourself. It is when you discover that the cruelty you condemn in others also whispers within you. But this realization is not meant to shame. It is meant to awaken. For when you understand that you contain both heaven and hell, judgment turns into empathy. You stop projecting your darkness onto others and begin integrating it into your own understanding of what it means to be human. Integration does not mean indulging the shadow. It means bringing it into awareness, holding it in the light of consciousness until its energy transforms. The anger becomes assertiveness. The envy becomes motivation. The fear becomes wisdom. Each shadow emotion contains a hidden gift waiting to be claimed. Those who walk the path of self-knowledge learn to use both the shadow and the light as instruments of growth. They no longer strive to appear perfect. They strive to become whole. The world around us mirrors this same dance of opposites. Day follows night, life follows death, creation follows destruction. Nature never chooses one side of the cycle. It embraces both. And yet humans often believe they can escape duality by denying one half of their being. But in doing so, we lose connection to the natural rhythm of life. The light within us grows dim when it has no darkness to contrast it. True illumination comes not from avoiding the shadow, but from learning to walk through it without losing sight of the light. In relationships, this understanding becomes sacred. When we only show others our brightness, love remains shallow. Real intimacy begins when we reveal the parts of ourselves we once hid, the insecurity, the doubt, the tenderness beneath the armor. To love another fully is to love their shadow too, to see the whole of their being without flinching. The most profound connections are built not on perfection, but on shared humanity. When two people dare to meet in both their light and darkness, something timeless awakens between them, the kind of understanding that does not demand change but invites transformation. Every spiritual awakening passes through the valley of the shadow. The descent is not a punishment, it is a purification. We cannot ascend into greater awareness without first confronting what we have buried. The soul's light expands only as far as the darkness we are willing to explore. Those who have met their shadow carry a strange radiance, the quiet strength of someone who has wrestled with their own darkness and returned carrying the fire of self-knowledge. The shadow and the light are not rivals but reflections of the same truth, that every soul contains infinite potential. Within the same heart that can hate lies the power to love beyond measure. Within the same mind that can destroy lies the power to create beauty. The choice is not between light and dark, but between awareness and denial. When we allow both to coexist, life becomes whole, authentic, and deeply alive. The power of meaning in the quiet spaces between what happens to us and how we understand it lies the mystery of meaning. Life is not a series of random events, it is a language spoken by the soul, and meaning is its grammar. Every joy, every wound, every coincidence whispers something to us, but most people rush through their days too quickly to listen. They chase happiness, mistaking it for purpose, and yet happiness is fragile. It vanishes with circumstance. Meaning, however, is enduring. It does not depend on comfort or success. It grows out of the willingness to see significance even in suffering, to ask not why me, but what is life trying to show me through this? When life becomes painful, meaning becomes medicine. There are moments when everything familiar collapses, the job disappears, the relationship ends, the dream shatters. In those moments, logic offers little comfort, but meaning gives us a thread to hold on to. It tells us that there is still an unseen pattern unfolding beneath the chaos. Meaning transforms pain into passage. It does not erase the wound, but it gives the wound a voice, turning tragedy into initiation. Many people spend years running from their pain, unaware that within it lies the map back to their soul. To find meaning is not to impose it, it is to discover it. It requires stillness, honesty, and courage to see beyond surface appearances. The world we perceive is shaped by the lens of our consciousness. When we change the questions we ask, we change what life reveals. Instead of asking, how can I get rid of this feeling? We begin to ask, what is this feeling trying to teach me? That small shift awakens a deeper intelligence inside us. The meaning of life is not found in answers, it is found in awareness. Throughout history, those who endured great suffering often emerged with profound clarity because they learned to interpret their pain symbolically rather than literally. They saw hardship as a mirror reflecting something unhealed, unacknowledged, or undeveloped within them. The loss of love may become a lesson in self-worth. Failure may become the spark that ignites one's true calling. Illness may become the body's plea for authenticity. The outer event is never the whole story. The inner transformation is where meaning lives. Modern life, with its noise and distraction, distances us from meaning. We are taught to measure our worth by productivity, to chase validation through possessions, to drown discomfort in entertainment. But when everything external is stripped away, when silence returns, we are left with the one question that no distraction can silence. Why am I here? That question is not philosophical, it is existential. It is the pulse of the soul reminding us that we are not random fragments in a meaningless universe. There is an order, a design, an intelligence that we participate in, even when we cannot see it clearly. Meaning often hides in the very experiences we resist most. The breakup that forced you to be alone may have been life's way of teaching you self-reliance. The failure that embarrassed you may have been preparing you for greater humility and depth. The loneliness that once felt unbearable may have opened a door to spiritual connection. When seen through the lens of meaning, nothing is wasted. Every event becomes a thread in the tapestry of becoming. Life ceases to be a series of accidents and begins to feel like a conversation between your soul and the universe. Meaning is also what turns ordinary life into sacred life. Washing dishes, raising children, working late, all become profound when we understand why we do them. When a person feels their work contributes to something larger than themselves, fatigue transforms into fulfillment. When love is given with awareness of its sacredness, it becomes devotion. Meaning does not change the outer task, it deepens the inner experience. It reminds us that every act, no matter how small, can become a reflection of who we truly are. But the search for meaning demands that we stop pretending. It asks for authenticity. To live with meaning, one must be willing to face the truth of one's own contradictions, to accept that life will never be permanently comfortable or perfectly understood. Meaning is not about control, it is about connection. It is the realization that even in uncertainty, life is guiding us toward the exact experiences we need for the evolution of our consciousness. Meaning also awakens in moments of beauty and synchronicity. A sudden encounter that feels destined, a song that arrives at the perfect moment, a dream that mirrors waking reality. These are not coincidences, they are signals from the deeper order. They remind us that there is an invisible thread weaving through our lives, linking the seen and unseen. When we become attuned to this pattern, we begin to trust the flow of existence. The unknown no longer feels like a threat, it becomes a partner in our unfolding. Those who live with meaning carry a certain quiet strength. They may still experience sorrow, loss, and doubt, but these experiences no longer define them. They see beyond the immediate surface of life into its symbolic depths. They understand that even despair can be a teacher, that love often begins in loss, that death is not an end but a transformation of form. Meaning allows the heart to stay open even when the mind cannot comprehend. To find meaning is to remember that you are not a victim of life. You are a participant in its sacred dialogue. The events you encounter are not punishments or rewards. They are mirrors and messages. The power of meaning lies in this realization. Nothing that happens to you is meaningless unless you refuse to see what it reveals. The unconscious compass beneath the surface of our awareness, beyond the noise of thoughts and the chatter of daily life, there exists a deeper intelligence guiding us, a silent navigator that knows where our conscious mind hesitates to look. This is the unconscious compass. It does not speak in logic or language, but in symbols, sensations, and intuition. It is the part of us that remembers everything we have forgotten, the wounds of childhood, the dreams left unfinished, the instincts silenced by reason. It moves quietly, shaping our choices, relationships, and desires even when we think we are in control. The unconscious does not need our permission to influence our lives. It needs our attention to transform them. The mind is like an iceberg. What we see above the water is only a fraction of what exists beneath. The visible tip represents our conscious awareness, our plans, our reasoning, our social masks. Beneath lies the vast unseen landscape of the unconscious, holding memories, emotions, and archetypes that influence us in ways we can barely comprehend. This hidden world is not just a storage room for repressed feelings. It is a living intelligence, an ocean of meaning that connects us to something larger than ourselves. It contains the raw material of creativity, instinct, and spiritual awakening. But most people spend their lives adrift on the surface, unaware that the currents below are steering them toward the shores of destiny or despair. Every dream, every coincidence, every sudden emotion that seems to come from nowhere is a message from this inner navigator. When you dream of being chased, it may not be about an external threat, but an aspect of yourself that you are avoiding. When you repeatedly encounter the same symbol, a bird, a color, a number, it may be the unconscious drawing your attention to something unresolved. These are not random flickers of imagination. They are fragments of the deeper story your soul is trying to tell. The unconscious communicates through metaphor because it speaks the language of the eternal, not the literal. It guides through imagery, not instruction. But the modern mind resists mystery. We are trained to value logic above intuition, to analyze rather than to listen. We dismiss gut feelings as irrational, even when they have saved lives. We silence dreams with alarm clocks, medicate emotions that are trying to speak, and label imagination as childish fantasy. In doing so, we lose contact with our internal compass. We wander through life with maps drawn by others, parents, teachers, society, forgetting that each person's true direction lies within. The result is a deep restlessness, a sense that something essential is missing even when everything appears complete. That emptiness is not failure. It is the soul's way of reminding us that we are moving without orientation. To reconnect with the unconscious compass requires trust and surrender. It means creating space for silence, for dream, for wonder. It means noticing what stirs the heart and what drains it. Unconscious does not shout, it whispers. It hides in the small hesitations before we say yes, in the tears that rise for no reason, in the déjà vu that makes us pause mid-step. When we begin to honor these subtle signals, we start to align with the deeper pattern of our lives. Guidance emerges not as a loud revelation, but as an unfolding sense of rightness, a feeling that even in uncertainty, we are being led somewhere meaningful. Inner compass is also moral in its own mysterious way. When we act against our truth, the unconscious reacts through discomfort, tightness in the chest, heaviness in the gut, anxiety that seems to have no cause. These sensations are not punishments but warnings, like a compass needle trembling when we face the wrong direction. The body and the unconscious are allies. They work together to keep us authentic. The problem is that the conscious mind often overrides them, insisting on reason even when intuition says no. Yet every time we betray our inner sense of direction, we lose a little of our vitality. The unconscious compass never disappears, but its signals grow faint until we remember to listen again. Dreams are one of the most direct portals into this realm. In dreams, the unconscious takes the stage, weaving together fragments of memory, myth, and feeling to reveal truths that daylight cannot hold. A recurring dream is like a message that keeps returning because it has not yet been understood. When we record our dreams and reflect on their symbols, we begin to establish a dialogue with the unconscious. The more we listen, the more it speaks. Over time, we learn to recognize its signature, the way it nudges us toward growth through patterns of coincidence, instinctive attraction, and intuitive resistance. Art, too, is the voice of the unconscious made visible. Every great painting, poem, or melody is born from this deeper current. Creativity flows when the conscious mind steps aside and allows the unconscious to express what words cannot capture. That is why true art feels timeless. It comes from a place older and wiser than the artist's personality. To create is to participate in the language of the unconscious, to translate its invisible movements into form. In this way, creativity and intuition are not luxuries, they are the tools by which we navigate the invisible dimensions of life. The unconscious compass does not guarantee comfort. Its purpose is not safety, but evolution. Sometimes it leads us into darkness, because certain lessons can only be learned there. When we ignore its guidance, life often brings us the same lesson again in a different form, a new relationship, a repeated mistake, a familiar pain. The pattern continues until the message is understood. The unconscious is patient but persistent. It does not stop guiding, it waits for awareness to catch up. To live by the unconscious compass is to live with reverence for mystery. It is to accept that not everything can be explained, but everything can be meaningful. It is to trust that beneath our confusion, beneath our longing, beneath our fear, there is a wisdom older than memory, quietly steering us toward wholeness. Becoming the self every human being carries within them a quiet calling, a deep wordless urge to become who they truly are, not who they were told to be, not who they try to appear as, but who they are at their innermost core. This journey is not about self-improvement, it is about self-realization. It is the unfolding of the authentic self from beneath layers of adaptation, expectation, and illusion. To become the self is to return to one's center, to integrate the fragments scattered by life into a unified whole. It is a process both sacred and demanding, for it requires the courage to outgrow the roles that once kept us safe but now keep us small. From the moment we are born, we begin to absorb the voices of the world. We learn what earns approval and what invites rejection. We shape ourselves to fit the molds given to us. Student, sibling, friend, employee, parent. These identities are useful, yet none of them defines the essence beneath them. Over time, we start to mistake the mask for the face. We become so entangled in our roles that we forget the still presence watching from behind them. But the self does not vanish. It waits. It waits in the silence beneath thought, in the ache of dissatisfaction that no achievement can soothe, in the longing that whispers that there must be more than this. The first step in becoming the self is awareness. Awareness that the life we have been living may not be entirely our own. Awareness that our beliefs, fears, and desires might have been inherited rather than discovered. This realization can be unsettling because it threatens the foundation of identity. Yet it is the beginning of freedom. When you start to observe your thoughts instead of being possessed by them, you begin to meet the witness, the part of you that exists beyond personality. The self is not something we build. It is something we uncover by removing what is not truly ours. The journey toward the self often begins with a crisis. A relationship ends, a career collapses, a meaning once held sacred dissolves. These experiences strip away the external structures that once defined us, forcing us inward. The breakdown is not a failure. It is an initiation. When the outer world no longer mirrors who we are, the inner world begins to speak louder. The self calls us through discomfort, through restlessness, through the quiet despair that arises when we live out of alignment with our truth. Every loss, every disappointment, every confusion can become a doorway if we are willing to step through rather than run away. To become the self is to embrace paradox. It means recognizing that light and shadow coexist within us, that strength and vulnerability are not opposites but companions. The parts of ourselves we reject hold the energy we need to become whole. The anger we suppress contains power. The fear we hide contains wisdom. The sadness we deny contains compassion. Integration, not perfection, is the goal. The self is not the polished version of the ego. It is the totality of the being, the divine and the human, the wounded and the healed, the conscious and the unconscious, woven together into authenticity. As the self begins to emerge, the outer world often reacts. The people who knew us in our old identity may resist our transformation because it unsettles their own certainty. They may call us different, distant, or difficult, but becoming the self means learning to stand alone if necessary. It means trusting the quiet authority of the inner voice over the noise of approval and judgment. It means walking away from what no longer nourishes the soul, even when it looks safe, even when it feels familiar. True individuality is not rebellion. It is alignment with the deeper truth of being. The self communicates through intuition, through synchronicities, through the magnetic pull toward what feels deeply right. When you follow this guidance, life begins to organize itself around your authenticity. Relationships deepen, work gains purpose, and even challenges become meaningful. But this does not happen through force. It happens through alignment. The more you live from your center, the more the world mirrors it back. What once felt like chaos begins to reveal an underlying order, the unfolding of destiny that was always waiting for you to remember. To live from the self is to live in continuous dialogue with the soul. It requires listening, not to the noise of ambition, but to the subtle rhythm beneath it. It is an inward journey that paradoxically connects you more deeply to the outer world. The person who has met their self moves through life with a quiet strength, a calm that does not depend on circumstance. They no longer chase validation because they have become rooted in their own essence. They no longer compete because they recognize that every being has their own path to wholeness. They no longer fear solitude because they have discovered companionship in their own consciousness. The self is not an achievement but an awakening. It is the realization that the divine speaks through individuality, that life seeks to express itself uniquely through every soul. When you become the self, you do not escape humanity, you embody it fully. You begin to see the sacred in the ordinary, the eternal in the moment, the infinite in the breath. You no longer seek purpose outside yourself because you become the purpose. The living expression of consciousness becoming aware itself. The process of becoming the self continues throughout life. Each stage brings a new layer of depth, a new invitation to surrender what no longer fits. Sometimes it feels like expansion, sometimes like disintegration. But in both lies the same movement, growth toward wholeness. The ego resists, wanting control, certainty, and comfort, while the self moves in mystery, asking for faith. Yet those who follow the call discover something extraordinary, that beneath all the confusion and striving, there was never anything missing, only something waiting to be seen. The mirror within there is a mirror that no glass can hold, a mirror not made of silver or reflection, but of awareness itself. Does not show the face that others see. It reveals the soul that only you can meet. Every being carries this inner mirror, yet few dare to look into it for long, for in its depth lies not only beauty but truth, and truth often comes dressed as contradiction. To gaze into the mirror within is to confront both light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, love and fear, all existing side by side, woven into the mystery of being. From childhood, we are taught to look outward for reflection. We learn to see ourselves through the eyes of parents, teachers, friends, and society. Approval becomes a mirror. Rejection becomes a crack upon it. Slowly, we start to mistake these reflections for identity. We build ourselves from fragments of other people's perceptions, forgetting that every external mirror distorts. The mirror within, however, does not distort. It reveals. But it can only reveal when the noise of external validation quiets down enough for us to listen to our own reflection. To look inward is an act of courage. It requires facing not just who we are, but who we have pretended to be. The mirror within shows the masks we wear, the smile that hides exhaustion, the confidence that conceals doubt, the kindness that disguises fear of rejection. It shows us the difference between what we present and what we feel. For some, this revelation comes gently, through quiet reflection or solitude. For others, it arrives through crisis, when the outer world shatters, forcing the inner one to appear. Pain, in its strange mercy, often cleans the glass of the mirror. The mirror within is not judgmental. It does not shame or flatter. It simply reflects. It shows anger as anger, love as love, emptiness as emptiness. What we see there depends on our willingness to look without turning away. Many avoid it because they fear what they might find, but the truth is that whatever the mirror reveals is already living inside us. Looking does not create the darkness. It simply brings it into the light of awareness where healing can begin. The mirror within becomes a tool of transformation when we stop trying to edit the reflection. Every emotion, every reaction, every longing is a reflection in that mirror, offering insight into the unseen patterns of our inner world. When someone offends us and we react with disproportionate anger, the mirror shows us an old wound that is not yet healed. When we admire someone deeply, the mirror reveals a potential within us that is waiting to be claimed. Life itself becomes a mirror, constantly reflecting our inner state through the people we meet and the events we encounter. What we reject in others is often what we have disowned in ourselves. What we love in others is what we have forgotten to nurture within. The outer world becomes a vast reflective surface through which the inner world speaks. This is why self-awareness is not isolation but relationship at its highest level. When you understand your reflection, you can see others not as opponents or enigmas, but as mirrors too. Every interaction becomes a chance to learn about yourself. The person who triggers you reveals your hidden sensitivity. The one who inspires you reveals your deeper calling. The child, the lover, the stranger, all become fragments of your own consciousness, showing you who you are through the language of reflection. To live consciously is to realize that everything you experience is a conversation between the self you know and the self you have yet to meet. But looking into the mirror within is not always comfortable. It demands the dismantling of illusions. It asks you to question the stories that keep you safe, the ones that say you are powerless, unworthy, incomplete. These stories cloud the glass, turning the reflection into something distorted. The more you cling to them, the more distant your true image becomes. But when you begin to let them go, the mirror clears. You start to see that you are not the narratives you inherited, nor the roles you play. You are the awareness watching all of it unfold. In this clarity, the mirror within reveals something sacred, the presence that observes but is untouched by what it observes. Behind every fear, behind every wound, behind every identity lies the still consciousness that has never been broken. This presence is what ancient mystics called the soul, the unchanging witness that remains even when the outer form changes 1,000 times. To recognize it is to remember that you are not just a collection of thoughts or experiences, you are the awareness in which they appear. The mirror within is both teacher and companion. It reflects where we are on our journey, showing us what needs attention and what has been integrated. It does not rush, it waits. Stage of self-discovery reveals a new layer of reflection, a deeper image of truth. At first we may see confusion, contradiction, even chaos. But over time, as honesty replaces denial, the reflection becomes clearer, softer, more whole. What once looked fragmented begins to form a pattern, the outline of the authentic self emerging from beneath the noise. When you learn to trust the mirror within, life outside begins to change. You stop seeking constant validation because you already know your worth from the inside out. You stop fearing judgment because you have faced your own reflection and found compassion there. You stop chasing belonging because you have discovered that home was never a place, but a presence within yourself. The mirror within becomes your compass, your sanctuary, your truth. It is said that we do not see things as they are, we see them as we are. The world reflects the state of our inner mirror. When it is clouded with resentment, the world appears hostile. When it is clear with understanding, the world appears luminous. Thus, every act of inner clarity becomes an act of outer transformation. The more deeply you know yourself, the more gently you move through the world. The mirror within becomes not a surface of reflection, but a window of vision, a way of seeing life as it truly is, unfiltered, whole, and awake.